My name is Chris Stevens. I graduated here in 1997. Actually saw both of my parents on that last video. They've both been pretty instrumental in the school, coaching and teaching for years. You know, when Mrs. Jackson actually came to me and just kind of mentioned, speaking a little bit about what CCS has meant to me, really a whole lot of things went through my mind. Obviously with my family being involved in the school and helping, get it started, you see like the average students that come here now, they see this, big structure, big basketball building, and that's not the CCS that I know. I mean, it's great how God's blessed the school, but when I think of the school and what it's actually meant to me in my life, it really has been a collection of believers who've sacrificed, and both financially and in time. I know specifically once when I was in high school, I saw my mom's paycheck, and I was like, "Oh, you guys are getting paid weekly now." She goes, "No, give me that bag." And that's the sacrifice that most of the teachers have made, and I don't know as often if the teachers get as much recognition as you should. In a world that money makes the world go round, you living a life of sacrifice, coming from a student who's spent years there, I can speak from my own experience how you've directly impacted one person out of the hundreds or thousands that have come through that school, and how really important that is. I could think, Mrs. Chambers and Mrs. Fillmore. I saw my second grade teacher, Mrs. Watson. That was, people that I haven't seen in years. And you just sometimes forget that the impact that you actually have. I was telling my dad, I said, you look around at the building and all the banners and stuff, and while that's great to be successful on the field, it doesn't mean anything in the end of life for what God has called you for and the purpose that He actually has you here on this planet. All this stuff is great, especially the golf banners over there. It's my name on a few of those. But ultimately in the end, it's the sacrifice that God's called you to make, and I know specifically because I've seen it in my own family. And I've been around, Mrs. Osfeld, Mrs. Weimer my entire life, and I've seen the sacrifices they've made. And I just wanted to let you know from a student who's been there how much that actually means. Especially, we talk about it a little bit with my sister. She has a 2-year-old. And why you would ever want to put a kid in a public school, I've never really quite understood that. Not that private school is for everybody, but just how important that period of your life when you're going from, 4th grade till you graduate, and how many things are actually thrown at you. You have your entire adult life after that to really fend for yourself and what the world is going to throw at you. Like, I personally can't imagine in my life, having been in school, of not having the Christian principles that were taught to me during those times. It's hard enough to make the right choices sometimes, much less when you don't have a good foundation and you're not surrounded by a group of teachers who are truly there to help the students and to lead a godly example. And that really is ultimately why God has called so many teachers to this school. And I wanted to let most of the teachers know that that really is, and I can talk about it from my own friends that I went to high school with, that is something that we've all talked about, that is something that was instrumental in our lives to this day, that there are still times I stop and think, Mrs. Chambers would be happy with me if she knew I was doing that. And that is because that's the example that they lead. And I think that's, really important. So what I would like to do is, if you're a current teacher or a former teacher of CCS, would you go ahead and stand up real quick? It is amazing when you see what God is able to do from someone who is willing to listen to Him and willing to sacrifice. Because I can tell you, it wasn't in their wildest dreams that God would ever bless the school to the degree that it has and what He's going to do in the future. But there is somebody in particular I do wanted to thank, is Mrs. Osfeld. If you would go ahead and stand. somebody who's been around my family a lot, which you have, and I was telling my mom earlier, I said, I was really going to start my speech out with Mrs. Oswald used to beat me when I was a kid, which is true, you actually did. And then not only that, you actually taught my mom how to beat me when I got home, so. But I know the influence that you've had, in my life and my parents' life, in the godly example that you've led, and I wanted to let you know how appreciative I am of that. There's always something you've always, words when somebody asks me, well, what does Mrs. Oswald mean to you? And 3 simple words that just kind of always come to my head is, I believe in you. And that's something from a student, who's been at this school. It's something that I think most kids these days don't hear enough of. The teachers and an administration that believes in them through the ups and downs, through the good choices they make, through the bad choices they've made. And I personally wanted to say that I thank you for that. And we're actually going to gain some perspective of one of our earlier graduates who actually used to live down the street from us. And I know it was one of my dad's favorite students, Brandon Long.